updating on Children's Disability Services, which is the Department of Families with the province of Manitoba. We did have an improvement model back in June of last year, 2017. So we're going to look at that. We're going to review eligibility criteria services, and we're going to try to answer your questions, and whichever questions we need to follow up on, we'll do that too. In 2013, our system took a look, and what we were very aware of were there variable waiting times across the city and a variable amount of resources within the community areas in Winnipeg. So we embarked on a modernization of CDS, and we had a number of work groups that involved the frontline staff and leadership to take a look at just where our system was at. And in July last year, that's when we did roll out our new service model. Really, the underpinning of our model has to do with case weight and categorization. And so this model, we took it and applied it to 2,200 cases in Winnipeg. And the basis of it is to look at time spent with the needs of a family. So based on a family's assessed needs, how much time it would take a caseworker to support that family. And so we weighted it and we categorized it on intensity. And this really underpins our new model. And what it looks at is equalizing caseloads across the city to support equalized response times for families. The other thing we did with the modernization is a new team located at SSCY, Intake and Brief Intervention Team. And so that's where after eligibility, that's where the cases arrive. And again, this is to create a consistency in kind of response, type of response, and to manage the volume across the city. Family support resource modules or support modules for families. That is where there are common topics of information for families. That is usually done at the front line. And we're looking at how we pull that information together and provide it in a resource module to families. And so right now, those would be bringing families together to network and provide the information. And another team, which is still in its infancy, is the Unified Family Support Team. And this is a partnership with Winnipeg Child and Family Services. The idea is that we would branch out to the other authorities. It's really about families that are working with CFS and on the continuum of, does a family just require maybe some enhancement from CFS? Are there questions that simply CDS has? Are they in the midst of considering placement, or at the other end of the continuum, are they heading into placement or an emergency placement shelter? And the idea is, how do we work together to support these children and their families? Child development services are managed by one clinical supervisor, Erin Berezny. The child development counselors, which is an early intervention service, still remain in their community areas. So again, it's pulling the information, pulling the team together to provide a consistent form of intervention. So what happened with supervision previously to June 2017, we had a supervisor in each community area supervising children's disability services. Those supervisors could also be supervising community living disability services, employment and income assistance, marketabilities, and previously early learning and childcare. The idea here was to pair up the sister community areas so that the supervisor would only be supervising children's disability services. So have one program that they could focus on, become very acquainted with the information and problem solving. So as you can see from this diagram, we have quads, which means basically 4 community areas in one. So we now have, they're called program managers. They used to be supervisors. So they would cover each quad. And centralized services and resources, which is Diana and I and the team here at SSCY, basically means we support the city. There is talk and look at how we support provincially. So some of the specialized teams at SSCY with CDS are the Integrated Children's Team, and we work with the Pediatric Home Care. That is not new. That's actually a model that we're looking at following, and with the Unified Family Support Team with Winnipeg CFS, and then hopefully the other authorities. And we purchase service from SMD in terms of providing support to children with significant physical disabilities and who are deaf, hard of hearing. So right now, we are noticing from these changes equal response times across Winnipeg. We are assessing the need and providing the service based on the need of the family. And that need, if it changes at any time, is open to reassessment. We really have a collaborative leadership team across the city. We meet every 2 weeks. We look at the referrals, we look at the flow of referrals, and again, trying to ensure that there is fairness and equality of assignment of files. What we've noticed is our wait list for services is reduced up to 50%. Wait time for triage has also reduced up to 55%, and early intervention wait time is reduced up to 70%. Previously, in some areas, we had families waiting for up to 3 years of service. So what is Children's Disability Services? It is a voluntary program, so the parents need to be a partner when they're signing up for CDS. We do support parents who parent a child that has a disability. We use the family-centered approach, which means parents are the expert of their child, knowing what's best for their children and their family, and they're the primary source of information. We consider ourselves one of many partners that a family may have in supporting their child. And we can be involved until children turn 18 years of age, and our services goes till the end of the month of the child's 18th birthday. Eligibility has remained the same. So again, children under the age of 18 living in Manitoba with their birth, adoptive, extended families. Eligible children must have a medical diagnosis confirming one or more of the following conditions: intellectual disability, developmental disability, autism spectrum disorder, lifelong physical disability, or a high probability of developmental delay due to a pre-existing condition. And these need to be diagnosed by a developmental pediatrician, psychologist, school psychologist, psychiatrist. Application process has remained the same, other than all of the applications come here to central intake. We will accept applications from anyone as long as the parent is open to the service. And our fax number is 204-948-4788. And all of our applications are to the attention of the Family Support Services Coordinator. And that is Darlene Stevens. She is the one who determines eligibility. And a parent will receive a letter upon eligibility. General inquiries can be made by calling 204-945-8311. So once a child has been found eligible for CDS, CDS will engage with the family to initially offer a brief assessment and intervention. So any family that is needing low intensity or low time from their case manager will remain at SSCY with the brief and intake intervention team. Families who are requiring more support or have medium or high intensity needs are transferred to their community area or their quad in agreement. Or they could be transferred to a specialized team, so the ICS or the Unified Family Support Team. And again, these case weights are adjusted as the family's needs change. The idea is the right service at the right time. Is that you? Okay. I'm going to hand it over to Diana Renaud, who is the program manager for the specialized teams at SSCY.
Okay, good morning. So what Lisa has shared with you are some of the changes and the rationale for the changes that our program has undergone. Now we're going to talk more specifically about our services. So these have not changed. So for those of you who are quite familiar with Children's Disability Services, these are services offered provincially and continue to be available to families as required. So one of the things that we offer to families is the support of a community service worker. So previously, not very long ago, we were referred to as family service workers. Now the title has been changed to community service worker. This is keeping in line and more consistent with our partners outside of Winnipeg. So as Lisa mentioned, the family's needs may change from time to time, as will the role of the CSW, and their involvement will vary depending on the family's needs and circumstances. A community service worker can provide information, emotional support. They can assist families in preparing for significant changes or transitions, such as the school entry process or age majority, just to name a couple. And so really they work closely with families to assess their needs and help develop a service plan. And again, doing this in a family-centered way so that families are really leading and guiding what their service plan would be. One of the most popular and coveted services that we offer is respite. We know that it is very demanding to be a parent, period. We know that when we add the disability lens to that, that even more. So it's lots of demands placed on. So respite is to give a break, the ordinary demands of parenting a child with a disability. And what this really speaks to is the assessment that we do when we're assessing for respite. I think most of us would concur that all parents need a break sometimes. All parents need some time by themselves, or some time together as a couple, or some time one-on-one with individual siblings. We are not able to meet all of those particular needs, which are common to all parents. Where we really take a look at is what's different, what's special, what's extraordinary about this family situation based on the child's disability related needs. So the assessment is not so much about the parenting as much as it is about the disability. And that is something that has always been the case, but we're being more cautious about in recent years because our demand and our growth has increased, and we're needing to be cautious about the resources that we're spending. So we do take a close look at this part. So that means that not all families are necessarily eligible for respite. And we would take a close look at how their needs are different than needs of, let's say, if their child was typically developing. If respite is approved, it can be provided in the home or in the community. That varies in part depending on the age of the child. Most of the time for younger children, the respite is in the home. Sometimes for teenagers, adolescents, it's more community-based to help kids get out and about in their communities. So the community service worker will work with families to determine if respite is a needed support and then the best way to do that. So supplies and equipment. A number of years ago, the department developed a unit called the Disability Health and Support The Disability Health Support Unit will also, take a look at home or vehicle modifications. So funding may be available for making modifications to a family's home or vehicle to accommodate the child's disability. So medical transportation is a service available to folks who need this support in order to access medical appointments. This is utilized more readily in the rural and north areas of the province, where public transportation and just the vast geography and distance that people need to travel become a significant barrier, although it is something that on occasion we will look at in Winnipeg as well. So in terms of therapies and direct interventions, Lisa mentioned a little bit earlier that we do have child development counselors that work with the province of Manitoba, and they work specifically with families and and their preschool children to assess their developmental needs and work on specific goals which reflect the family's values and priorities. So again, very much taking that family-centered approach. They work collaboratively with other specialists and therapists involved in the home, and they can provide their services in the family home, in a child care setting, or a combination of both. And as many of you know, CDS partners with other service providers who provide occupational therapy, physiotherapy, speech and language, and audiology. We also offer a variety of services for children who have been diagnosed with autism spectrum disorder. For one thing, some of you may know, here at SSCY, we have social workers who work with families pre and post diagnosis to help them through that diagnostic process and ensure they get connected and know how to navigate through that part of the system. So families with a preschool child diagnosed with autism may receive services through the St. Yvonne Autism Program or through the Autism Outreach Specialist within the Department of Families. So they would go to an information session where they learn about those two different service models and make the decision about which program they think best would meet their child and family's needs. And that concludes the formal part of our presentation. But Lisa and I are happy to answer any questions, whether that be about our improvement event that led to our current service model or about our services and resources. Hi.
Some cases, if there's a child who is but they have quite high needs and we're feeling like your help in addition to this, if we do feel that that's the case, is it a regular referral process?
Thank you. I'll repeat the questions so that people online hear, and you can correct me if I'm wrong or if I missed anything. That's okay. So the questions about with the Unified Family Support Team, whether that involves primarily children at home with their families, and or what supports might be available if children, for example, are apprehended and placed in care of CFS, how Children's Disability Services might be involved, and if so, what that referral process might look like. Okay, thumbs up. All right. So what we did with the Unified Family Support Team, just to provide a little bit more context around that as well, and then I'll certainly get to your question, is that we pooled all of the files where Children's Disability Services and Child and Family Services were involved from around Winnipeg. So again, just a Winnipeg focus on this one. We brought them here to SSCY, where we have a small team of 3 community service workers working along with myself. So that is from Winnipeg Child and Family Services, as well as the other 3 authorities, the Northern Authority, the Southern Authority, and the Métis Authority. So we pulled all those files together. Our working relationship right now, as Lisa mentioned, is strongest with Winnipeg Child and Family Services. So we have partnered with a supervisor and a family service worker with Winnipeg Child and Family Services who have now joined our team. So we get together monthly and we learn about each other's programs. So there's some cross-training and many consultations where we are providing information about disability-related needs, resources, what families might be going through or might be requiring, and CFS is offering their lens in terms of sorting out what might be protection and parenting capacity issues, and again, what resources and expertise they can lend to assist us. So that's part of the work that's happening right now. Children's Disability Services eligibility criteria is clear that children are not to be in care of CFS to be eligible for Children's Disability Services. So the bulk of our work is indeed with families who are at home with their parents or extended family, and that's where we can really kind of service together. However, what we have done are 2 things. So one is when an apprehension does occur, or it might be a voluntary placement agreement where kids go into care of CFS, is that we continue to kind of work together as a team to transition children into their placement rather than just kind of closing the file or stopping our involvement right away. So we're certainly committed to sharing our information and helping the new care providers get caught up to speed. So we're trying to be very collaborative in that process until we feel comfortable that the new care provider, the new case manager is able to kind of move forward. And even once we close a file, doesn't mean that we're not available. So folks can access our unified family support team for consultation even. So we do have some families where children are permanent wards of the agency, and so we maybe have never been involved and might never be involved in the future. However, folks can come to this unified family support team, whether it's to an individual or to our monthly staff meetings, to kind of discuss the situation and the challenges that may be in front of this child, and we can kind of brainstorm or offer some information or ideas.
In the past, when kids have the complex medical needs and are wards of CFS, has there been any thought of having the integrated children's services team still be involved? Because those are the really complicated ones. And as a therapist in the community, sometimes it's a real challenge to try to coordinate services when that person from the ICS team has not been involved.
You know, because what we're, thank you. So again, the question was if there has given some thought to having children with complex medical needs who might typically be involved with the ICS, the Integrated Children's Services team, but they are in care of CFS. So it's hard to kind of navigate and collaborate when there are these complex medical needs for kids in care. So the question really that is being asked is really kind of a policy question. It is about eligibility criteria. So that is not something that we have any control over. I don't believe, or to my knowledge, there has not been discussion about changing our eligibility criteria for our program. However, again, we have initially with Winnipeg Child and Family Services, and we're going to get there with building relationships and connections with the other authorities, but with Winnipeg CFS, again, very willing and able to join with those workers to be able to share our information and our knowledge and any suggestions. So really only on a consultation basis at this time. Okay, and I think Lisa's going to add to that.
Yeah, thanks for answering all the questions so far, Diana. I just wanted to add to that if a child is eligible for the ICS team and then goes into care, really our motto right now is we want to try to bridge, we want to assist in transitioning any child. So.
You usually have it the other way around, right?
Yeah. I'll just move the other for the online question.
Question from someone on the webinar is there an objective measure for assessment of respite services, particularly for preschool age children?
So respite is really assessed on a case-by-case basis. Our community service workers look very carefully at the family situation as a whole, but really most specifically about the differences between what this family's life looks like compared to how things might look if that particular child was typically developing. So we would look very carefully at those factors and keeping in mind that our program is built on the premise of basic and adequate. So unfortunately, sometimes families have a desire for more than what we can sometimes offer, but we do look at what is the need, what is the minimal amount kind of required to be able to help stabilize and support the family in meeting the objectives that respite is set out to do. So not a standardized process, but really a case-by-case assessment.
We use a process where we have a financial review committee, and that is CDS leadership across the city, and we have reps, frontline reps. So it's If it gets to the point where it's an exceptionality, we look at it as a team.
So the question was, for respite services, are they being provided specifically for the child with disability or also to their siblings? So like so many answers, it begins with it depends. Okay. Part of it depends on the age of the child and their siblings, and some of it depends on the needs of the child with the disabilities. So families generally opt into respite, and they may get what's called a self-managed contract, where they then hire their own respite provider to provide the respite. They pay the self-managed provider, and then they invoice our program for reimbursement. So that is kind of one model. The other model is where we have government employees who are hired by resource coordinators who are matched, and we then maintain the supervision because we've hired them, we train them, we supervise them, and then we pay them. So there's kind of two models of respite that is discussed and assessed between the community service worker and the family. And so with self-managed, families have more flexibility typically, although there are many responsibilities that come with that. So it's not the right fit for everybody. But some families who choose self-managed may choose to have their child's, their respite provider caring for all of the children or some of the children, siblings, along with the respite. When it comes through our program, through the government employees, we can consider that, but we need to ensure that the safety and well-being and the objectives of respite for the client eligible for children's disability services can be maintained in addition to care for the siblings. So if care of the siblings may place risk, or that we can't fully meet the needs of the child with disabilities, then we may not be able to offer care to the siblings. And for example, sometimes there's such an age difference that, maybe when the child with disabilities is 12 and their sibling is 4, then what we would be doing or spending our energy or time with the 12-year-old doing might not really fit very well if there was a much younger sibling. So it's all based on kind of that assessment about the child's needs and, whether it can be appropriately and safely provided. So there are times when we may provide a respite worker to care for the child with disabilities, and at the same time, the family hires a babysitter to care for the siblings.
More going on that.
Sure.
Is there a reason why the
okay, so the question is the pay between the government employees versus the self-managed providers. I'm not sure that it is drastically different, although one of the difference is that with the government employees, they are paying also union dues and paying into workers' comp, and the other one that I'm CPP. So there's various workplace deductions that are automatically coming off of their checks, where that is not the case with the self-managed providers. It's more of a contract opposed to a wage.
So is there an equalized wait time you set across the city? And do you have a benchmark for what that is? Like, is there a certain point at which you want to get over 6-month wait or whatever? What are you at?
Sure. So the question is, our wait list has been reduced by 50%, and just confirming that that is consistent across the city of Winnipeg, and looking at what our benchmark or targets would be and what it currently looks like. Okay. So that was the question. So prior to the change that occurred in June 2017, all the different community areas maintain their own wait lists, and we're able to assign community service workers or child development counselors based on the resources within that community area. So there was a really wide discrepancy. Some community areas had next to zero in terms of a wait list that they were able to assign staff almost immediately after eligibility was determined, and other community areas had to wait 3+ years before they had a community service worker available for them. So that was a huge discrepancy that made our leadership feel very uncomfortable that within one program, within one city, that the services could look very, very different depending on what side of a highway you lived on. So that was problematic and kind of spun the work groups and the change that occurred. So what is currently happening is that preschool children are prioritized for the brief assessment, or triage as we had called it. They're being prioritized because we want to make sure that children get access to those time-limited early interventions as soon as possible. We know that the research supports that, and we want to do everything we can to make sure that our volume of work doesn't get in the way of ensuring people have access to the therapies and early interventions that they need, and like I say, are very time limited. So those ones are prioritized and tend to be completed within 3 months. So then they can make sure that we get the child development counselors, et cetera, connected up. The school-age children continue to be a challenge for us. We are definitely making some great headway, but it has still been slower than we might like, and we're continuing to look for ways to be able to address that with the growing number of referrals that we continue to get. So we are processing school-age referrals for families that had been referred to us in October 2017. So these families have been waiting a year for services. Our objective would be to have zero wait list, or to be connected within 3 months. That would be our goal. But right now we're at the 12-month window for school age. All the preschool ones are getting done much quicker, and that number again is consistent across Winnipeg, which is something else that we're really quite proud of. The other thing though, although families are not connected to them yet, each of those families waiting are attached to a community service worker. So because these are school-age kids, they may be connected to other professionals through their school or other places like MATC or other therapists, doctors, etc. So if we do get a call from a parent or collateral, we will do a very quick check to see if there are any urgent needs, because our model is designed to try to respond very quickly to families with urgent needs. So if that's the case, they are connected to somebody who will then do that brief assessment triage as quickly as possible. If there are not any urgent needs, then they do need to kind of wait in the queue.
Mary and I work at centralized intake, and we do front call, we take turns taking calls every day, and we're getting calls from families who have had their assessment through SSCY. Now they're looking for parent support for kids. It's mainly autism. They've got the diagnosis. Now they're looking for what's next. I'm not sure if there is anything. Like, we have a neurodevelopment clinic, and that's about it. It's a year and a half. They're looking for something now. These families are looking for emotional support, education. We have a webinar series for them, but I'm not sure, like from SSCY, do you provide them any resources? Like, is there any resources that we could offer them, or?
So the question comes from folks who work with the Manitoba Adolescent Treatment Center centralized intake, and what they are fielding calls from parents whose children have been diagnosed with autism spectrum disorder through SSCY, and wondering, what resources or supports the parents can access. MATC does have some resources, but they also have waitlist issues. So the question is wondering what else SSCY or others may be able to offer to these parents in terms of emotional support around the diagnosis and services and resources around the autism. So if children are found eligible through SSCY, then that would suggest that they are likely preschool children.
Because once they get that, once they get into school, that's when
right, so once they're in school, because for preschool children, we do have our autism outreach team, our child development counselors, the St. Timont Early Learning Program. So yes, I think that does become a challenge for school-age families who, particularly if they've missed out on that early intervention support, that they maybe aren't as well connected. So certainly that is a gap, that is a challenge. We do, through our work of our community service workers, can help families get connected to counseling if that's what they need, or information. We've got a number of kind of our favorite kind of pamphlets or resources about grief and understanding autism that we can share with people, kind of as we assess what their needs are. But I think we share your concern that for a lot of families, there isn't a lot of opportunity for networking and development. I know St. Amant does offer also a workshop series that we can let people know about, and some may or may not, kind of follow up on those. So as we hear about resources, then we just try to connect people up. There is, I'm not sure if everybody's aware, there's a website, asd.mb.ca, which is kind of a clearinghouse for in Manitoba of all the autism related resources. So we will make sure that families know about that website. And when we do hear from professionals that are offering a service to families with children with autism, then we will also request that they connect with that website, because there's a button on that website that if you're offering a service that they'll always update or add new services. So so we try to build on and rely on that as best we can. But nothing specific besides the one-on-one support that we provide each family.
Someone online, it's a long question.
Okay.
So for children who are part of the same autism program to no longer have a child development counselor, who is responsible for facilitating the transition to school?
So the transition to school protocols actually suggest that it is the parent who is the leader of the school transition process, and that child development counselors, St. Amant tutors, speech language, OT, all these wonderful folks who support our preschool children are part of that team and can support families in that process. So certainly we know that our child development counselors really take it upon themselves to go above and beyond to make sure that families are aware of how important that document is and to get it completed and submitted. This year, which is the first time, I'm very happy to be able to say that the St. Amant program has agreed to distribute those that protocol package, the transitioning report, along with a cover letter that we have developed to families so that they get that same message about how critical it is to communicate with the school division in advance, to be able to share any reports or information about their child's needs in advance so that the school can do that planning. So St. Amant previously would be part of the team, but we're not necessarily handing out the packages. So this year, they're partnering with us on that. So the question is wondering if the ICS team, that's the medically complex kids to the integrated children's services team, whether there's been some thought to expanding that outside of Winnipeg. So I'll let Lisa add, but to my knowledge, I don't know. Each region's leadership will be developing partnerships within their region, including the Winnipeg Regional Health Authority, and looking how they provide services. So I'm not aware of any of that movement. I don't know if Lisa has an update on that or not.
This is a more general comment that how our how CDS and CLDS are actually just in the process, the early stages of looking at how we support disabilities provincially. So I'm not really sure how that will apply to ICS. I'm confident it's on the table though. I just really want to thank everyone for sharing their thoughts and experiences. It really, I've taken a few notes and it just helps us to continue to, I guess, progress and address some of the issues that you are hearing, seeing, feeling. And we really are trying to be a responsive program. And so the feedback you're giving with your questions is really helpful for us. So thank you for that. We have our brochure here, so you're welcome to take some. I have stacks more in my office if you want to take and pass.
Sure, the question coming so early on this first Tuesday of the week. And so the recording of the webinar and all the questions and the answers will be posted on the SSCY website later this week. So you can watch the recording again, or you can share it with somebody who was unable to attend. And then if you think of any other questions, you can either email or call Diana or Lisa, or you can email me and I can pass them on. And so next month in November, also the day after the long weekend, that's unfortunate. We will be hearing from St. Vermont and their ABA program and changes that they have made, and it's actually a very similar talk to this one about eligibility and how you can apply and the services you can receive. So hopefully everyone is able to make it in November. And for the people in the room, if you haven't signed in on the other side of the door, if you just so I can keep track of how many people come to the session. Thank you very much.